Um,
um, uh, I'm hoping that people can see that there's a link in the notes. Link, you said you're going to pop it in, which I'm just popping together a very quick SoundCloud. What am I talking about? Word cloud. So if you've not had a chance to pop over on your browser and just add 2 or 3 words to that SoundCloud, word cloud, that would be absolutely fantastic. And I'll pop it in and have a look as we go along through the presentation and see what transpires. I'm going to share some stuff today, largely about designing and structuring, but we'll see how we go. So first off, share my screen, and with a bit of luck, you should have slides. Is that true? We all good? Excellent. Okay, so the stuff that I'm going to talk about today is kind of true in general terms, in the same way as we all know that in general terms, men are taller than women. But if you look at the way those graphs overline, you know that some women are taller than some men. But in general, men are taller than women. So there are exceptions to every rule. What we're going to do here is just rattle through the rules, if you like, and we'll see how we get on. And one of the first things that I want to just stress is that there are 3 pillars to making a decent presentation, online and offline. It doesn't matter where you're making it, these 3 things apply. The one that always makes me giggle is that whenever people come to me, they go, Simon, please can you help me? I'm terribly nervous. How do I deal with this? And they're always talking about the delivery of their presentation, which frankly is the icing on the cake. You can't salvage dodgy content and a bad structure with great delivery. On the other hand, if you've got great content and fantastic structure, you can get away with mediocre delivery. So first things first, don't stress out about the delivery. Concentrate on the other 2 things and let the delivery sort itself out. That's a bit of a simplification, but you probably get the idea. And that's becoming more true now as we start to move to making presentations online in what is becoming a much more informal norm. So you can see I'm working here you can see my house in the background and stuff, rather than my office and all of that kind of jazz. So the idea of delivery is lesser in terms of importance than it has been in the past. So don't stress if you make mistakes. It's not the end of the world. But let's start with some really interesting rules, if you like, about making presentations, because it turns out that about 85% of them don't work. And the definition of work here is something changes, right? So whatever it is that you're trying to make happen with the presentation doesn't between 80 and 85% of the time. And there are a couple of reasons for that, the most common of which is a dodgy call to action, but the second most common of which is something called the curse of the expert. And this slide illustrates it, I think, quite well, because if you talk to the photographer about this slide, she starts saying, oh, when I took that photograph, I was in this place at this time using such and such a camera with such and such a lens. The F setting was this, the exposure duration was yada, 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 yada. And actually, what I needed to know was, Simon, get back in the Jeep. You are 10 meters away from a live tiger. If you look through the leaves there, you can see there's a live 3-year-old female tiger. But the photographer talks about the process of taking the photograph because that's what she's excited in. Actually, as an end user of that photograph, what I care about is get back in the damned Jeep, Simon. You do not need to walk into the bush and have a wee, because all of a sudden the wee is less important than anything else. So the curse of the expert is a really common thing, and it's particularly true for people who have technical expertise. And I'm guessing that's like most of you guys doing what most of you guys do. You're really technically competent on top of your game. What you tend to do is tell people how rather than the end product. And that how happens in a little black box. Okay, let's call it a little black box, but you're the only person that cares about what the hell is in that little black box. Everybody else cares about what that little black box can do for them and only what that little black box does for them. So I can't see you, but pretend I can. Just wave at me if you've ever used Excel. And wave at me with the other hand, or some kind of other spreadsheet, actually, and wave at me if you've ever used a sorting algorithm in Excel to sort a column of data. So I'm guessing most of you have got your hands up at this point. But if I asked you, do you know the actual algorithm for how that data gets sorted? No, you don't. All you care about is random data in, sort the data out the far end. The little algorithm on the inside, the little black box, is only interesting to the people who wrote the little black box. And all presenters, just about all presenters, make that mistake. They talk about what's in the little black box rather than what the little black box means for the end user. Okay, so that's the biggest thing I want you to take away today. Nobody cares about how you do stuff. They just care about what you do. And as experts, what you will tend to do is go, well, you do this, 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 and eventually you get that. They don't care about everything at all until you get to and eventually you get that. So the very first thing you need to do when you make a presentation is attract somebody's attention with what are they going to get out of it? What does the little black box do for them? And it's a really simple analogy I want to use here. I have an office upstairs. My wife might be working downstairs and she might shout up the stairs to me, would you like a cup of tea, Simon? And the thing is, I'm concentrating on what I do. I'm not listening for my wife. I love her, but I don't listen to all the time. And it's not until she says the word Simon that I suddenly realize I should have been paying attention to the fact that she was talking to me. So then I have to replay in my head whatever it was that she'd said in the previous 10 seconds. And sometimes I guess right and sometimes I guess wrong. How about this? How about if instead of asking me, would I like a cup of tea, and then attracting my attention, how about if she'd said, Simon, would you like a cup of tea? It's just like a presentation. You say, Simon, to get their attention, and then you do the presentation, would you like a cup of tea? Or even better, how about this? An interactive thing where you go, Simon, and you wait for me to go, yeah? Would you like a cup of tea, darling? Ah, that would be fantastic. Thank you. It's worth pointing out, by the way, that when I drink tea, I drink it in half-pint mugs. We are talking like serious tea addiction. But what most presenters do is they go technical, 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 technical result. And nobody cares. So big thing number one, start off with the outcome. Right? Ignore the how, start off with the outcome. Once you've got their attention, what you need to do is allow them to concentrate on what it is you're trying to give them. There's a guy called John Sweller who come up with the idea that people's ability to concentrate is wrapped up into 3 bits. They have 3 bits to how hard they're working. Intrinsic load is how hard it is to understand because it's hard to understand. Extraneous load is how hard it is to understand your presentation because of how well or how badly you're delivering it. And germane load is what you want them to do. That's when they go, oh, okay, get it. So that's why SEO is important. That's why I should come to you. That's what makes you different. That's the bit where they go, oh, right, I really understand what you're saying now. Problem is that the blue bit is fixed. So if we're going to max out the yellow bit, which is the bit we want, the only way to do that is to reduce the red. And let's just zoom in on the red. Very quickly going to rattle through the top half dozen reasons why the red bit goes horribly wrong. Okay. First up, if they can't understand the way you are speaking, it reduces their ability to remember what the hell it is you're telling them spectacularly, well into double figures. Now, I'm not suggesting you change your accent, but I am suggesting that you make a point of speaking really clearly. If anyone's interested, I will tell you later where the research for this started out, but basically I'll tell you now because it's fun. Started out in the United States where they had classes in psychology, and the classes were, these guys got lectures from a guy who had no accent. These guys got a lecture from a guy who had a strong Spanish accent because he was Mexican. And at the end of the term, these guys all did better than these guys, but they got exactly the same lectures, same slides, same gestures, same everything. The only thing different was the accent for this guy. This guy's students, they all did better. Every single one of them did better than this guy's students. And here's the sting in the tail. This guy, he's an actor. His only skill lies in copying this guy, who is the guy that actually knows his stuff. Okay, so pretty clearly, font is the visual version of accent. If they can't read it, if they don't get it, they can't concentrate on the content, which is why all presentation experts recommend sans serif fonts without flicks and ticks, simple to read fonts, such as this one, Helvetica. There is a reason that all emergency signs are written in Helvetica. It's because it's damned easy to read. And if it's emergency signs are written in it, there's a damn good indication that you should be writing in it as well. This is one that I think you might find quite interesting, given what you guys do. There is a shed load of research that says what most of us try and do is prettify our diagrams by moving the labels in our diagrams around until they look acceptable. It turns out that that's not good for how well people understand the diagram, and that what you should do is you should put the label on top of the thing that you are labeling, come hell or high water, no matter how ugly it looks. So if you're sharing a screenshot from Google Analytics or whatever, and you want to label something, don't have the thing here, the label here, and an arrow to them. Put the label right on top of whatever the hell it is that you're talking about. Okay. Background noise is just a general term for distractions. Okay. It's pretty obvious. Do whatever you can to reduce distractions. Nothing much I can do about it right now, because let's face it, chances are that half of you have got your phone set up and you're clicking away on your phone, and you've got, in fact, I just heard somebody's phone go ping at that point. You've probably got your email tabs open and people walking in and stuff like that. I know you can't do much about it, but whatever you can should be done, because background noise that distracts people can reduce their ability to remember what you've said by well over 50%. So the last two distractors are social. So far we've had physical, these are social. And this one's huge. This one will stop people listening to you and believing what you've said by up to 60%. Alienation is a jargon term for, do they like you? It's as simple as that. Because if they don't like you, they won't listen to you. It's just absolutely as simple as that. Okay. Now, you can't make people like you from the stage or through a camera, but what you can do is the next best thing, which is to get them to bond with you in some way, which is to make them think that they are like you. So anything you can do in your presentation to make people think that they are like you, have the same accent, use the same jargon, dress the same, whatever it is, okay? Make them think that they are like you. And then the last one is huge. This is the jargon term for whether they want to be there. There's such a thing as what are called identity variables. These are things that are so embedded in your psyche that if we changed them, it would change how we think about ourselves. So if you're in the UK, for example, right now, the population is pretty much 50-50 split between people who want to leave the European Union and people who want to stay in the European Union, and they just can't listen to each other. They can't listen to the facts. Neither side can listen to the facts, because they've become so strongly identified as a leaver or as a remainer that it would change their belief about what they are to change their minds. In the same way as if I looked in the mirror and suddenly discovered I was short, blonde, and female. I wouldn't go, oh my goodness, I'm actually short, blonde, and female. I would go, the mirror is wrong. Because it's so embedded into my psyche that I'm tall and male with brown hair. Brown hair, let's be clear, brown hair. I am not grey, because in my head I'm 28 and I've still got brown hair. Stop it, Lenka, you're laughing. Stop it, I've got brown hair in my head. All right, are we clear? Excellent. Okay, so those are the things that you want to stop screwing up. And we can talk later about how you want to stop screwing them up if you're interested, but those are the biggies. So once you've got those things out of the way, how do you get people to actually want to listen to you? Well, let's just rephrase things, because it turns out people can't listen to your presentation. They can't take it in unless they are interested. So here's a really simple example of how you can make things more interesting. It's a pretty neutral statement. It's from an advert for somebody who was trying to sell time management and prioritization type stuff, okay? And they're good questions. Do you ever find yourself at the end of the day wondering what you accomplished? If the answer is yes, you're not alone, but you don't get excited about it until the end. So let's try just jazzing that up a little, just to show you a little bit of perhaps what I mean. You can make it more personal so that people identify it with a bit more. And you can give them a chance to answer the question. This is really interesting, because the more work they do, the more likely they are to take it on board. That's really interesting from your point of view, given what you guys do. If you tell people what to do, they're less likely to do it. Whereas if they realize for themselves what they're supposed to do, they should do it. So here what you've done is you ask them the question, and then you wait a beat for going, oh yeah, actually I do. That is me. And then you move on. It's a really simple change, isn't it? But the impact is quite profound. Or you could, for example, use the wording that they use. Right? At the end of the day, do you ever think, what the... And heck is not the word that I use, by the way. Heck is the polite version for what I use. Because what I usually say is, what the have I got done today? Or where the hell did the day go? So you use the jargon terms that they use, you use the language that they use. Or if you know what they look like, you show them what they look like. Here's the original, just so you can see how boring it is. But let's try just doing this. If that's what they look like, they show them what they look like and they go, oh yeah, that's me. That's exactly how I feel. Leave me alone. I don't want to have anything. Oh God, my brain is full. And then you ask them the question. And you can see how I've wrapped the text around the arm of the girl in that picture as well. So the two things are starting to build together. That means that's kind of going to go, this is you. Or, and given what you guys do, maybe this is more you. Okay, so you show them an Asana task list. This is genuinely this is my Asana task list. I've not freaked this out anyway. If you know that the people that you are talking to are geeks or nerds and they're more likely to have online to-do lists than offline to-do lists, you show them an online to-do list and then you go, what is it always run off the page? Because, oh yeah, that's me. That's exactly how I feel. And in fact, for those of you who are looking at this in big enough screens right now, if you zoom in, you can see that I've got outstanding tasks from the 12th of August from last year. In fact, the 5th of June from last year. So clearly my to-do list always runs off the bottom of the page. So the big thing is always to present it from their point of view so that they identify with it. We can give you another example of it here. If I ask people how exciting this slide is, you usually get a 2 out of 10. If I ask them how exciting this slide is, exactly the same content, it gets a 4 out of 10. We've doubled how interesting the slide is simply by flipping the color scheme, because in what we laughingly call advanced Western nations, we have a subconscious association between fear and black and dark. It's as simple as that. But if you want to be really impactful, what you do is you split this screen up and you go, the third scariest thing on the face of the planet is, and people have an emotional connection with it, because without that emotional connection, they cannot, not won't, cannot remember what you are telling them. And then there's the second scariest thing on the face of the planet. It's what I'm doing right now, which is making a presentation. And to notice that I'm bringing the emotional stimulus first and then bring in the data. Okay, so here's the emotional stimulus, then I bring in the data. Why is that? Because you are physiologically unable to have an emotional and an intellectual response at the same time. So you give them the emotional response and they go, ah, and then you give them the data to hook onto it. Now, if you can remember what the previous list said, you know what the next slide is going to show, right? Brace yourselves. If you're one of the 50% of the population that's going to freak out, brace yourselves. You know what's coming. There you go. But again, you bring in the data later. And you'll notice that I've brought in the data smaller. 51% of the population say they are afraid or very afraid of snakes. I've brought it in smaller because I don't want to undermine the emotional impact of the striking snake. Okay, so starting from the top in revision, it's all about telling people why they need to know about it. It's about telling them what the box does and what it does for them, not what's in the box. Then it's all about getting rid of the things that could get in the way, such as background noise. And then it's about making an emotional connection with your audience to maximize the chances that they listen to you. If you want more, and why wouldn't you? presentationgenius.info/hi, and I will spam you forever. I mean, I will send you helpful worksheets every few weeks. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing the slide, and then can I have a chat? We can talk about any questions that might have popped up, and we'll see where we go from there. So stop sharing, and back to the conversation. Hi, Linda, how you doing?
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was fantastic. Thank you. It brings back lots of memories of different talks that you can now realize where people went wrong and stuff.
The best bit about that is you said 20 minutes. I've done it in 19. Hurrah! A minute early.
It's always good with presentations to be on time.
Or early. Nobody ever got shot for finishing early.
Nope. So one of the questions that we've got before is looking at how to keep audiences' attention while staying informative.
Oh, Right, let me, I can still share the screen. So this one's best solved with a graph. Bear with me for a second while I just share the whiteboard here. All right, so the traditional way of making a presentation is pretty unpleasant. Can I just check, Glenn, could you just wave at me? You can see my screen share as I draw a graph there. Okay, so down this axis here, we've got, this is time, okay? This bit here is time. And up here is how much your audience pays attention to you. Fair enough? Okay. Now, what we used to think is that people's attention started high, went up, peaked, plummeted, plateaued, and at the end of the presentation, it went back up again. And what happened at this point here is that people started to pay attention again. This is usually about 18 minutes into a 20-minute presentation. They started to pay attention again because the presenter said something like, so in conclusion, and people had to, oh, all right, okay, it's nearly finished now. Okay, but you can use that technique to make better presentations. Let me just show you a really, really dirty trick. Instead of giving one long presentation with a boring flat bit in the middle, why not give 4 5-minute presentations instead of a 20-minute presentation? So what happens is you get this, and at the point where people stop listening to you, you say something like, right, that wraps it up for topic 1. We're done. We're finished. Here's a quick summary of topic 1. Good. If you got that, great. If you haven't, what you need to know is this. And then you start a completely different presentation on topic 2. And at that point here, you make another break point, and then topic 3, and it starts to go down here. So you can see, it's really scrappy drawing, but with a bit of luck, you can see that the red lines are clearly higher than the blue, because every time the blue, every time it starts to plummet down here, you just stop and you go, right, that's the end of that presentation. Let's make a completely different presentation. And the way you do that is things like a black slide or change presenter or change medium or something that really hits the kind of reboot button in people's heads. When I say change presenter, by the way, I mean change presentation style. So there's no point in swapping one boring white middle-aged man for another boring white middle-aged man. You need to do something that's different. Okay, so one boring white middle-aged man for an enthusiastic woman or somebody who's a different race or a different medium. So it's not that you change presenter that's the important thing. It's the sexiness of what you're doing that changes. So I hope that answers that one.
Yeah, this is awesome. It just really gives me so much kind of clarity and very practical tips on how to structure a presentation when you know that you're delivering half an hour presentation, that it gives a very clear understanding of kind of taking the topic and cutting it into like 4 or 5 chunks and having a very clear ending and kind of summary of everything, and to allow you to really play around with that.
It's almost like you stop and restart. And the stopping is, you could signal that stopping by a black slide, or you could say, does everybody get that? Or you could do a practical exercise, or you could get them to put that. But anything that says, right, that is the end of the chapter. Done.
Yeah. And that's coming out from our comments as well. Niraj says, what Simon said makes so much sense. Challenge lies in implementing.
You're on your, I was going to say you're on your own for that. You're not. I mean, I'll talk to you about it, but not here, not right now. The hard part is doing it. What I'm giving you here is very much the what you should be doing. The how you do it depends upon who you are, what your audience is, and all of that kind of jazz. That's the kind of stuff I get paid for.
You touched on the using kind of graph labels and stuff like that. One of our questions is, Kiara is asking how to present data in the most interesting and memorable way.
Graphs. That was easy. First things first, ask yourself, do I actually need to present the data, or do I need to present the end product of the data? Because inevitably when people say, how do I present data? What they mean is, how can I get away with boring the arse off my audience with 32,000 tables that nobody's ever going to read, let alone understand? Ask yourself genuinely, do they need to see that? Or do they just need a summary table at the end that says, if we carry on doing what we're doing, we're going to go bankrupt in. Okay. Now, they may well ask you for the detailed data, and that's great, because if they ask you for the detailed data, that means they've bought in already. They're committed, they're emotionally engaged to what it is that you're telling them, and now what they're trying to do is dig deeper into it and verify it and make sure it's okay. So think very hard. Do you need to give it to them? Secondly, if you can give it to them in graphical form rather than tabular form, so much the better. And even better is if you can do what I did in that last slide demonstration, where you give them something emotional, such as the photograph of the tall building, and give them the data that is associated with it. They're much more likely to remember it. Okay, but graphs are the compromise that most people come to rather than data. Incidentally, people won't remember that. If you give them data in a presentation, the statistics are very clear. People won't remember it. Somewhere, if you're lucky, about 10% of what you tell them in a presentation gets remembered. If they really need the data, it's best to give them a PDF that they can download at the end of the presentation. Okay, hope that one helps.
Yeah. Which touches really nicely on one of the questions that we got, is how to end presentations well, especially online. Oh,
not with questions. So not what I'm doing now. Okay. In fact, by coincidence, I blogged about this last week. In fact, as I forgive my vague eyes, as I just go and look for that blog post for you. Yeah. Okay. Link, if I put it in the chat, could you move it across to the Facebook stuff?
Yeah, will do.
There you go. So there's a blog post that's coming your way, whoever it was that asked that question. But basically, if you finish a presentation and go, any questions? The worst thing that happens is tumbleweed, and you just feel like an idiot. The best thing that can happen is that you get questions and you carry on taking questions until there are no more questions. At which point you're kind of going, is that it? Are we done? Can we go for coffee now then? Excellent. The problem with that is it sucks all the energy out of the room. It's just it's like pouring a bucket of water onto the sand on the beach. You start off with a lot of water and you end up with none because it's all just dribbled away. What you need to do instead is go, I've got time to take 3 questions, only 3 questions. First person to put their hand up gets the questions. You, and you. And that keeps the energy high. And then if you really want to, you can be so magnanimous and go, oh, I've answered those questions so quickly, I've got time for an extra one. Squeeze that one in there. Okay, that's it. But it keeps the energy going. And then you go, that's it. I'm afraid I've got time for no more questions. If you want to come and see me in the bar afterwards and buy me a coffee, that's fantastic. But I've got no more time now. And here's the killer thing. Don't walk off stage at that point. You've done all your questions in front of a black slide. And now you pull up something sexy behind you that says, and here is a reminder of the key takeaway from today's presentation. So you do the presentation, go to a black slide and do questions. Then you go to a summary slide. And then you get the hell off the stage. Yes, it's all about limiting the number of questions you take, basically.
Okay. Well, we'll see how I'm going to deal with it right now in this online screen. So we'll see.
Okay. Well, this is kind of different, isn't it? It's more of a chat, and I'm quite happy to hang around and do questions for almost as long as people want to ask, really. But see how it goes.
That's usually how we roll here. We have some questions in advance, and I have some questions, and we get some questions in real time.
Cool.
And where there are no more questions, then we finish it off. So exactly not how it's supposed to be done, but
exactly. Well, there is a time limit on this, which is to do with how long I can go without a cup of tea.
That's fine. Enjoy until we finish Simon's cup of tea. We can continue. And I have one question that's about the delivery. I know you said the delivery is not the most important part, but at the same time, lots of people will feel nervous. There is the issue of confidence with presentations, and someone asked is how to remember all the words so they don't need to require notes.
Practice. So suck it up and practice. Stop pretending that you're too busy to practice. Assuming you genuinely are too busy to practice, the dirty trick that all presenters use, or professionals use, is presenter view. I'm guessing most people have come across presenter view by now. If you haven't, it's a very simple little tool. It's the best thing that PowerPoint ever invented. Well, they didn't. They nicked it from Apple's keynote, but it's the best thing about PowerPoint, which is that you can set up your PowerPoint slides so that it doesn't show to the audience the same thing as it shows to you. So what you can see, what the audience sees is a big slide. What you see is something completely different. You can set it up in the way I've got mine customized is it shows me my current slide, it shows me the next slide, It shows me the time of day. It shows me how long the presentation has been running. And at the bottom, it gives me keyword reminders about what I'm supposed to say for the current slide. Now, I don't need them because I've rehearsed my stuff over and over and over and over. But if I'm making a presentation for the first time, or if I'm covering for somebody else's presentation, that's where my notes go. So you don't have to have them in your hand. You have them on the laptop as keywords. You glance down, you go, oh, that's what I'm talking about. You talk to your audience, you glance down, you talk to your audience. So presenter view is the thing. Definitely the thing.
That's amazing. Rehearsing is one of the things I do struggle with. I really don't like having something memorized. It's something, if I do have a script and if I'm trying to memorize it and then rehearse it, I really just trip over my words. So having a speaker view, having just some bullet points and notes and just knowing by heart what I'm saying and really practicing this way really works for me. But obviously there's different people who will work.
No, you're right. That's the way that most people should be doing it. There are exceptions to every rule. Just like I said, some men are shorter than some women, but the generalized rule for the vast majority of people is it should be a bit like jazz. You should know what the chord structure is. You should know what the melody is, but then you mess around it. So your presentation is, you know what you're going to say, you know what the key points are, but the actual words you use tend to come in the flow of the moment. There is only one exception to that, two exceptions to that. That is if you are so absolutely terrified you can't think. And the other exception is your opening credibility statement at the beginning of the presentation. That should not be made up. That should be slick.
Awesome. And that kind of brings me to another question, that it's not being able to stay on topic and just go into different directions, be it in the main presentation when your just thoughts go somewhere else or in the Q&A session. So do you have any tips on how to stay focused on the topic in the main presentation or in the Q&A session, how to manage Q&As?
Oh, well, the Q&A thing we've kind of covered by just having 3 questions. Bang, bang, bang. Limit yourself to just those 3 questions. The how to stay on topic is half covered by presenter view, because you say what's in your notes for that slide and only what is in the notes for that slide. That will stick you to that stuff. And here's a dirty pro trick. When you practice your presentation and you figure out how long it is, at key points during your presentation, make a note of how long through the presentation you should be at that point. So if on slide 4, you know that you should be 3 minutes into the presentation or whatever, you put that information in your presenter view, so that when you get to slide 3 or slide 4 or whatever it is, it tells you exactly how far through the presentation you should be going. And you go, ah, I'm way behind timetable already. I should be on slide 5 by now, or whatever it is. The presenter view will remind you of that, and that will just bring you back to topic in this blind half second of panic when you go, I need a 45-minute presentation slot to do a 20-minute presentation because I've started to waffle. And that's particularly important at the beginning of your presentation. It doesn't matter so much at the end of your presentation if you start going slow or fast there, but if you're slow or fast at the beginning of your presentation, you're never going to be able to make it up. So just stick the time slots in to the beginning of presentation, particularly presentations that you're giving for the first few times. That should keep people on topic quite nicely. So stick to the words and have the timing in there.
Awesome.
The dirty trick I use, by the way, is usually having a member of my team in the audience. And if I can see them going, I know I'm waffling.
Yeah, it's great if you can work with the host, the organizer, and have some signs in kind of giving them insights into how fast you're going, if you're behind, what timing it's. Because some people, especially if you're starting, I struggle to be able to keep up with all the details, like what you did this, watch this, watch this, watch this, and just having certain ways of people giving you signs.
Yeah, you're right up to a point. It depends, A, how much you trust the conference organizer. And let's face it, most of them are amateur because it's not what they do for a living. And secondly, getting that information in a way you're not familiar with just gives you one more thing to think about. So even if the conference organizer does promise to hold up red, yellow, green cards or whatever it is, do your own thing as well so that you can ignore the red, yellow, or green cards if you need to. Okay,
Yeah.
do your own timing thing so that you know what it is and you're not reliant upon other people's stuff.
My way of giving timer to my speakers is that I usually sit somewhere in the back, and to be able to take pictures and tweet and share. And the closer I get to the stage, the closer. And the moment I'm on the stage, kind of looking at them and try to rip the microphone off their hand, and they know that they need to shut up. But yeah, this is my way of very gently getting people off the stage. The closer I am, the less time you have.
But with respect, by the time you've done that, it's already too late. Because if it's the end of the presentation and they've still not given their key point, then that's cheating the audience. You need to start warning them that they are running behind timetable at the beginning of the presentation, not by the end.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really good point. Something for me to implement when I'm running my sessions. So much learning from not only giving presentations, but how to work with speakers.
I'm not saying you don't drag the microphone out of their hand. I'm just saying it's nice for you not to have to do that by giving them warning things in front. Hold a sniper rifle, and if they don't get the hint, then it starts to.
Yeah. We've had an interesting question from Kelly, who's saying, I'm looking for a kind of a speaker-ready kit to improve my webinar delivery. Any suggestions? Anything that you would have for speakers? I know that you have so much resources.
Speaker-ready kit. I'm not quite sure what she means. As in things that we carry in our go bags, or
I think it's for webinars. So it might be. I don't know if she's looking for some templates or for some what tools to use. Anything kind of she's mentioning improving webinar delivery.
Okay, tools to use. Zoom is the one that everybody knows. If you're on a Mac, then you want to grab something called Ecamm, which is just awesome, absolutely awesome. And it will allow you to do a whole bunch of dirty tricks, like have pre-recorded videos that you can embed and a whole bunch of stuff. It's just fabulous. If you're not on Mac, then as soon as I remember the name of the software that does it for you, I will tell you. It's Open Broadcast software or something. But that will allow you to do a whole bunch of other things as well. In terms of all kinds of sexy stuff you can play with, let me just give you an example here. There's one I use sometimes called Poll Everywhere, which does this. So if you've gone to the word cloud thing that we talked about earlier on, you can see what I'm going to do now is just share my screen. And I've pulled in, that's the word cloud as it currently exists at the moment. So you can see that anybody who's filled in the word cloud gets their stuff there. Okay, it's free for 25 responses, that kind of stuff, and you can get all kinds of sexy add-ons and stuff if you want to. Oh, that's interesting. I've lost control of my computer. So other things you can do in terms of interacting with people. Do you know what? There's a limit to what you can do. The easiest way of doing it is just to hold up cards in front of the screen. But if you wanted to go for software interaction stuff, probably the easiest thing is to buy a Mac. Sorry about that. Or use OBS.
Yeah. I think this is exactly what Kelly was asking. She said, amazing. I never used Polep, so she will have a look at that tool, definitely. And from what I can see, that's all for the questions. So I wanted to say a huge thank you, Simon, for a brilliant session and a great Q&A. I personally, again, learned so much from you, and I'm sure that our viewers have learned as well. If there's anything that you're watching replay, you have any questions for Simon, then drop a comment or just reach out to Simon. I'm sure that he's happy to chat with people and answer questions. And yeah, I would highly recommend signing up to Simon's newsletter, because there's so many helpful ebooks and tips and tricks and videos and stuff like that. So if you want to share the screen to just give people one more peek on the slide where to go to sign up.
Well, actually, there is something I want to, as a favor, I want to ask. Where you go, by the way, is presentationgenius.info/hi. But there is a favor I want to ask. if you think that what I've done has been remotely useful today, and if you've got a couple of hours spare, I know of a London-based charity who is looking for 2 hours or so coaching in the kind of stuff that you guys do. So if anybody's got 2 hours that they want to pass on to a charity, great, let me know and I will connect you. Full disclosure, the person I will connect you with is their new social media manager, and it happens to be my daughter. So you may or may not want to collaborate on that basis. But if anybody's got time, that would be a fantastic way of paying back. But if they want to connect the newsletter, it's presentationgenius.info/hi.